Hello, everyone. Today's pre-application webinar for the OVC Fiscal Year 2025 Preventing Trafficking of Girls Notice of Funding Opportunity will be presented by OVC Grant Management Specialist Tiffany Askew and Nairi Richards, and will provide an overview of one of their available grants. Thank you for watching. Now let's turn things over to Tiffany and Nairi.
Hello, my name is Tiffany Askew. In this recorded webinar, we will talk about OVC's mission, the NOFO, including funding opportunity focus, eligibility, and required documents. Then we will talk about the application process and resources. It will be helpful if you are following along with the NOFO and taking notes to help when you are submitting your application by the deadline. What is the Office of Justice Programs? The Office of Justice Programs, OJP, provides grant funding, training, research, and statistics to the criminal justice community. OJP is one of 3 grant-making components of the Department of Justice, along with the Office for Violence Against Women, OVW, and the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, COPS. The Office for Victims of Crime, which is a part of the Department of Justice Offices of Justice Programs, OJP, administers crime victims funds, which is financed by fines and penalties from convictions in federal cases and not from tax dollars. This funding supports formula programs to states, territories, and tribes, as well as many OVC discretionary grant programs for victims of crime.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nairi Richards. I will now provide an overview of this Notice of Funding Opportunity. Here are a few key details for this funding opportunity, which will assist in tracking important dates and reference materials. This funding opportunity is for the OVC Fiscal Year 25 Preventing Trafficking of Girls. Please note that the funding opportunity number can be referenced when searching for this solicitation. There are 2 important submission deadlines to be aware of. The grants.gov deadline is February 24th, 2026 at 11:59 p.m. The Just Grants deadline is March 3rd, 2026 at 8:59 p.m. Both are in Eastern Standard Time. The grants.gov deadline listed here refers to submission of the required federal application forms, which are outlined in detail in the NOFO. The anticipated project start date for awards under this solicitation is July 1st, 2026. This is a competitive funding opportunity, and the URL listed here links directly to the full NOFO document. We strongly encourage applicants to review it carefully in its entirety. The final link on this slide directs applicants to OVC's pre-application webinar page, where you can access the recorded webinar and related resources. We recommend bookmarking these links and reviewing the materials early to allow sufficient time to prepare a complete and compliant application. Programs will be funded to replicate and scale up prevention and early intervention programs for girls and young women who are at risk of or are victims of sex and/or labor trafficking. Implement or enhance efforts to identify and provide comprehensive, trauma-informed, developmentally appropriate services to girls or young women who are at risk of or are victims of sex and/or labor trafficking. This may include street outreach efforts, partnerships with organizations that serve youth, partnerships with juvenile justice and child welfare systems, and/or collaboration with key community stakeholders. Each category of funding has different eligibility requirements. These are detailed in the NOFO starting on page 7. Please be sure to confirm that your entity is eligible to apply in your desired application category. Applicants are responsible for confirming that their organization meets all eligibility requirements for the category they intend to apply under prior to submitting an application. The goal of this program is to prevent and reduce victimization of girls who are at risk for sex and/or labor trafficking. There are 2 primary program objectives for this funding opportunity. Objective 1 focuses on increasing programs that support prevention-related efforts. This includes activities such as education, awareness, risk reduction, resilience building, and the development of community-based support systems that reduce vulnerability to trafficking. Objective 2 focuses on identifying and providing prevention, early intervention, or comprehensive services to girls and young women who are at risk of becoming or who are currently victims of sex and/or labor trafficking. Under this objective, services must be trauma-informed and developmentally appropriate. Applicants should ensure that their proposed project clearly aligns with one or both of these objectives as outlined in the NOFO. Funding priorities. Applicants seeking priority consideration should specify the proposal narrative and in the budget detail form, if applicable, which of the following goals the project is intended to advance and how it will do so. Please note that addressing these priority areas is one of many factors that OJP considers in making funding decisions. Receiving priority consideration for one or more priority areas does not guarantee a funding award. Performance measures. Award recipients will be required to report program performance data using OJP's performance measurement tool, commonly referred to as PMT. In addition, recipients must submit a separate semi-annual performance report through Just Grants. Applicants can visit OJP's performance measurement page at ojp.gov/performance for more information on performance measurement activities. Unallowable use of funds. The activities listed here are out of the program scope and will not be funded. Please be sure to review this guidance carefully as you prepare your application. Additionally, as you prepare your application, be sure to refer to the budget detail form for further information on allowable and unallowable costs that may inform the development of your project design. Awards under the solicitation will be made as grants. Applicants should review the OJP Grant Application Resource Guide for applicable administrative, national policy, and legal requirements. This NOFO does not require cost sharing or matching funds. Applicants are not required to contribute cash or in-kind resources as a condition of award, and proposed budget should reflect only the federal funds requested. Any voluntary cost sharing included in an application will not be considered during the review process. To be considered for funding, your application must include the SF424 submitted in grants.gov, as well as the proposal narrative and budget detail form submitted in Just Grants. Your application must include a proposal narrative that follows all formatting and content requirements as detailed in the NOFO. The narrative should be double-spaced, use a standard 12-point font, have no less than 1-inch margins, not exceed 20 numbered pages, and be submitted as an attachment in Just Grants. If the proposal narrative failed to comply with these length-related restrictions, OVC may consider such noncompliance in peer review and in final award decisions. Tables, charts, and graphs may be included in the proposal narrative and can be created in a legible font smaller than 12-point font. These items will count toward the page limit. Your proposal narrative must include the 4 sections listed here and their merit review criteria. Your application will be evaluated for technical merit based on how your proposed project addresses these criteria. An additional 10% will be assessed through your budget and associated documentation. In the first section of the proposal narrative, you will identify the issue or problem you wish to address with this project. Using supporting information and data, you will need to demonstrate the needs impact on the target population and how it relates to the NOFO. In the second section of your proposal narrative, you will identify your project's goals and objectives and how these address the purpose of the NOFO. The third section of your proposal narrative should be the project design and implementation section. Here, you will detail the project activities that will help you meet your goals and objectives identified in Section 2. In this section of the proposal narrative, applicants should clearly describe what they plan to do and how the work will be carried out. This includes identifying the key deliverables, reports, or other products that will result from the project and when they will be completed. If subrecipients will be used, applicants should name them if known, or explain the process for identifying them, and clearly describe their roles in carrying out project activities. This information should align with the proposed budget and overall project timeline. The final section of your proposal narrative should detail your capabilities and competencies that you bring to successfully complete your proposed project. This includes demonstrating the ability to manage project activities, collect and report required performance measurement data, and identify who within the organization will be responsible for those functions. Applicants should also describe prior or current projects or activities that demonstrate their experience and ability to carry out the proposed project. The information provided in this section should directly support the applicant's ability to implement the project as proposed and comply with post-award requirements. The proposal narrative should summarize the experience of staff and partners who will be responsible for implementing the project. Applicants must submit a detailed line item budget using the Just Grants budget detail form. Budgets must be presented by year and cover the full 36-month project period, align with the proposal narrative, and remain within the award ceiling for the selected category. Proposed costs must be reasonable, allowable, and necessary, and within the applicant's capacity to manage. Each line item should include a clear name or description and a detailed calculation that supports the total cost and shows a direct connection to the proposed activities and objectives. Applicants may propose a budget that is less than the anticipated award ceiling amount. Along with your budget detail form and Just Grants, your application may also require additional attachments. For those applicants with a current federally approved indirect cost rate agreement, you should upload it as an attachment in Just Grants. Additionally, if you propose a rate for a consultant on your project that is higher than the established maximum rate, then you will need to request an approval before incurring costs at the higher rate. Additional application components. The application should attach the additional requested documentation listed here on this slide. Curriculum vitae or resumes. Provide resumes or key personnel who will work on the proposed project or a description of the experience and skills of key personnel necessary to implement the project. Tribal authorizing resolution, if applicable. An application in response to this NOFO may require inclusion of tribal authorizing documentation as an attachment. If applicable, the applicant will upload the tribal authorizing documentation as an attachment in Just Grants. See the application resource guide for information on tribal authorizing resolutions. In regard to the timeline, provide a timeline listing key activities and milestones and the quarters during which they will take place. That concludes this section, and I will now turn the presentation over to my colleague Tiffany to cover the remaining portion.
Your application must include an SF424 proposal narrative and budget detail form. In addition to these required elements, your application should also include many of the elements noted here. Please review the NOFO checklist carefully and identify which you should include. Use the checklist in your review prior to submitting your application. To meet the basic minimum requirements to advance to peer review and receive consideration for funding, your application must be from an eligible applicant, not exceed the award ceiling. Be responsive to the NOFO scope, include the SF424 in grants.gov proposal narrative in Just Grants, budget detail form, including budget items, their calculations, and explanations in Just Grants. Remember, if you fail to submit any of the required documents, your application will not be considered for funding. Now we will share a brief overview of the application submission process. Before you can apply for funding, you must register or review your entity with sam.gov. This process can take over 30 days, so please begin this step immediately. Your entity must register with sam.gov and obtain a unique entity identifier. You must maintain an active sam.gov registration status at all times. For entities new to sam.gov, the registration process can take time, so start early. At this point during the year, be sure your status reaches active before you need to submit a funding application. Renew your registration in sam.gov every 12 months. Even if you've applied for a federal grant before, you need to check that your registration is current and renewed. Applicants who do not have an active sam.gov status will not be able to complete step 1 of the application process in grants.gov. Also, be sure that your organization's points of contact in sam.gov, especially the electronic business point of contact or eBiz POC, are current. The eBiz POC may receive notices about time-sensitive actions that need to take during the application process. The process for submitting your application begins in grants.gov. Once you've located the funding opportunity in grants.gov, you must submit the SF-424. This is the extent of the application requirement in grants.gov. Once your application has been submitted and validated in grants.gov, you will be sent to Just Grants for completion. It may take several days for grants.gov to complete validations and release it to Just Grants. You will complete the rest of the application in Just Grants. There are 2 application steps, each with their own deadline. You must submit the required documents by grants.gov deadline of February 25th, 2026 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to be considered. We encourage that you do not wait until the close of the deadline to submit your application. Please keep in mind during the final step of submission, the Just Grants system will check your application for completeness. Unfortunately, we've had applicants fail to successfully submit their application because the NOFO deadline passed before this process was completed. Those that are completed after the deadline will not be considered for funding. You may enter preliminary information into grants.gov even if you haven't fully determined your budget or project scope. You will be able to edit and update all your entries in Just Grants. Once you have submitted the forms in grants.gov, you will submit the rest of your application in Just Grants. This deadline is March 3rd, 2026 by 8:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Just Grants submission should include all items that are required in the NOFO. For technical assistance, submitting your application in any of these platforms, please contact the appropriate help desk listed in the NOFO and at the end of this training. After the Just Grants deadline has passed, OVC will thoroughly review all applications. As a reminder, this process only applies to competitive NOFOs. Non-competitive NOFOs follow a different process. First, we check to confirm that the application contains the basic minimum requirements that were described in the funding opportunity. For applications that miss these requirements, you will receive notice that your application has been eliminated from further review. For competitive opportunities, peer reviewers or the subject matter experts assess the technical merit of an application. OVC staff then assess applications based on factors such as geographic diversity, past performance, and whether applications are likely to meet the funding opportunity's goals and objectives. We then evaluate the fiscal integrity of the applicant, examine proposed costs, and determine whether the budget and budget narrative accurately explain the project's costs and whether those costs are allowable and reasonable. Finally, OVC reviews potential risks presented by applicants prior to making an award. This pre-award risk assessment takes into account a variety of factors, including the applicant's financial capability and past performance. During the review process, OVC may contact you to clarify program or budget details. Applicants are often eager to learn how their application is progressing through the review process. Unfortunately, DOJ staff, including user support and OJP Response Center, cannot share any information with you until the final award has been made public. If your application has been funded, specific Just Grants users for your organization will be notified by email and will see the award appear in the Just Grants account. If you receive notice of an award, you must take specific steps in Just Grants to accept or decline it. The DOJ Award Acceptance Checklist on the Just Grants Resource website can walk you through those steps. If you are not selected for funding, OJP will notify you by email after all award recipients have been notified. You can visit OJP's Grant Awards website to see all OJP awards made by year, program, and locality. Applications submitted under this FY 2025 funding opportunity may be funded in future fiscal years, including FY 2026, dependent upon and among other considerations, the merit of applications and the availability of appropriations. We have many resources available to help guide you through the application process. Grants.gov has a comprehensive quick start guide to help you register for and apply to OVC awards. The guide includes sections on registering, roles, workspaces, completing forms, and submitting your application. The Just Grants website has a collection of resources available for you to use. Training materials include self-guided e-learning videos, supplemented by job aid reference guides, checklists, and infographics. These resources will help you navigate the system to complete various essential grants management tasks during the application process. The DOJ Grants Application Submission Checklist includes step-by-step instructions on preparing your OVC application. The OJP Grant Application Resource Guide provides guidance to assist OJP grant applicants in preparing and submitting applications for OJP funding. It addresses a variety of policies, statutes, and regulations that apply to many, or in some cases, all OJP program applicants and to grants and cooperative agreements awarded in fiscal year FY 2025. Some of the OJP programs may have program NOFOs that expressly modify a provision of this guide. In such cases, the applicant is to follow the guidelines in the NOFO as to any such expressly modified provisions. The DOJ Grants Financial Guide is the primary reference manual to assist OJP, OVW, and the COPS Office award recipients in fulfilling their fiduciary responsibility to safeguard grant funds and to ensure funds are used for the purposes for which they were awarded. Applicants will want to become familiar with the guide. It compiles a variety of laws, rules, and regulations that affect the financial and administrative management of your award. References to the underlying laws and regulations have been provided in the guide as much as possible. The top 10 topics the guide has listed here, such as financial management systems, allowable costs, unallowable costs, federal financial reports, among others. Visit the OVC website to learn about OVC's history, the funding, and finding multimedia products and register for upcoming events. Today, we've given you a brief overview of how to apply for the OVC FY25 Preventing Trafficking of Girls NOFO. For further detailed training on application submission, you can attend a live weekly training session, download detailed training slides, or watch a pre-recorded version of this training. Be sure to start your application in grants.gov and Just Grants as soon as possible to confirm you have access. If possible, submit your application before the due date. OJP will only accept late applications if an applicant can demonstrate that there is a technical reason they could not submit. So you will want to ensure that you have plenty of time to address any technical issues you may encounter. Just Grants can be reached by phone at 833-872-5175 or email to justgrants, all one word, .support@usdoj.gov. When contacting any of these system help desks, please be sure to request a tracking number so that you can document that you sought assistance with your issue. This will be important in the event that you need to document that you had a technical issue that prevented you from submitting your application. Finally, the OJP Response Center is available to answer questions about programmatic requirements of the NOFO. They can be reached by phone at 800-851-3420 or at email at ojp.responsecenter, all one word, at usdoj.gov. If you are a current grantee, we appreciate your understanding that your grant manager and other OVC staff cannot answer questions about an open NOFO directly. For purposes of fairness and transparency, if you reach out to us, we have to refer you back to the OJP Response Center so that your question can be documented and addressed officially. Finally, please keep in mind that the OJP Response Center is also who you need to contact within 24 hours of the grants.gov or Just Grants NOFO deadlines should you experience any technical issues that prevent your application submission. Keep in mind you will need to be able to document any technical issues, which is why starting your application early and maintaining any tracking numbers if you have reported an issue is critical. If you need assistance when registering or working in sam.gov or grants.gov, please contact their help desk directly. Thank you for your time and attention today.
Thank you, Tiffany and Nairi, for that thorough overview of this important funding opportunity. We hope you found the information presented here today helpful. If you're interested and eligible for this NOFO, here are the next steps to take. Access the NOFOs at grants.gov and ovc.ojp.gov. Register in grants.gov early. This process can take several weeks. Review program-specific application deadlines and requirements. Contact the OJP Response Center for assistance. For more information about the Office for Victims of Crime, please visit their website at ovc.ojp.gov. Thank you for your time, and we hope to see you again.